What is going on, YouTube? Today I have another crafting video for you today. I said today twice. We're going to be focusing on amulets. And last league, there was an incredibly overpowered way to deterministically get pretty much best in slot +3 proj amulets with spirit, crit, all that shit. Unfortunately, Homogs are dead. That means we can't get amulets that good anymore, but there are still ways for us to craft exceptionally good amulets. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that today. If I can show you guys, I guess like my Ainge trade history, I have sold quite a few of them. So this one was like the cheapest one that I sold for 6 div, but then this is the most expensive one that I sold for 60 div. Peppered in there is going to be mostly like around 17 to 25 div amulets. They're quite expensive, but they are very cheap to craft actually, surprisingly. What is the process? So you can do this on pretty much any base, but I'm doing it on rarity gold bases just because I think that these are the most valuable. You can get up to 20 rarity off of the base. It's like actually insane. And given how nerfed rarity is, getting rarity on your base is incredibly important. They also sell for quite a premium. So you can buy them either as the base yourself or you can drop them yourself. What I would recommend is you would download a filter. I'll link mine in the description. But essentially a filter that would kind of highlight gold bases, and you drop the gold base, this gold amulet white base, and then you just hit it with a perfect trance, perfect hog, pray you hit a +3. Now, this doesn't have to be +3 proj, it can be +3 minions, +3 spell, all that stuff. +3 proj just happens to be the highest value +3 skill you can get on amulet. The other ones still have value, but +3 is just the most meta. So what we do from here, if you only have one stat on it, is you're always going to want to YOLO a perfect hog. If we hit something really good on the prefix, that's amazing, and I'll show you what to do next. If not, that's not a problem at all. We can still take care of the craft very, very deterministically. Now, this one isn't as deterministic as the bow video, but it is still pretty deterministic to guarantee quite a few very, very solid stats and give a very high chance for some other very, very solid stats. Awesome. So let's get right into it. So we hit tier 2 max ES. This is actually not bad. I would say like this is good enough that we could just keep it. So from here, all we're gonna do is add rarity. I like to just check between like different currencies to see like which one you can get the best price on. Like sometimes you can get them cheaper for chaos, sometimes you can get them cheaper for exalts. In this case, it's probably exalts unless you were wanting to wait a decent amount of time to sell them or buy them in chaos. All we have to do now is greater essence of opulence these. So in case you don't know, this adds rarity, but because of the rarity nerfs, this actually gives you guaranteed tier 1 rarity now. So we can add guaranteed tier 1 rarity to our amulet. Very, very nice. So we have a pretty good situation here where we have high proj skills, high rarity, and then high of another stat. If we had a bad other stat here, all we need to do is whip out this Omen of Sinistral Crystallization, use a Essence of Perfect Enhancement. This guarantee removes the prefix, and then this guarantee changes that prefix into a global defense roll, which is very, very solid. Because we hit the prefix, we don't really need to do that. But if we miss the prefix, that's what we would do. In fact, even though we hit it, we still might use this perfect essence later. Let's just hold on to that thought for now. So we have 3 really good mods now. Either we hit the AUG and we have 3 naturally good mods, or we miss the AUG and we add on this perfect essence of enhancement, and then we get 3 really good mods. So here is kind of where the Homog changes come in, because or you would have been able to guarantee like crit chance, but now we can't do that anymore. And we have to take a slight gamble, but it's still going to be well worth it in the long run. We're just going to want to say, fuck those cold reses and add fire res here. The catalyzing exaltation makes it so we have a 5x higher likelihood of hitting the things that we're catalyzing, which in this case is fire, which is fire res here, and also all elemental res because it has the fire tag. And it gives it a 5x higher likelihood of hitting, which means that this 8k weighting for fire res becomes 40k. And then this 5k weighting for all LE res becomes 25k. And as you can imagine, with this total weighting of 100, this goes to 40k, this goes to 25k. So then it essentially becomes a 40 plus 25 divided by 150. We have a 43% chance to hit one of these 2 reses, but you also have to include the fact that we have a chance to hit cold and lightning as well, which means we have like pretty much over a 50% chance to hit a resistance here. So we are in a very, very good spot. The Dextral Exaltation just makes it so we can only target suffixes, which then again increases our likelihood of hitting a resistance. And then Perfect Exalt Orb is just because they're number 1, they're very cheap right now. They're only like 2/3 of a div, maybe even a little bit less. And then number 2, the reason why we use a Perfect Exalt Orb over a Greater Exalt Orb is because Greater Exalt Orb only gives us minimum eye level 35, whereas Perfect gives us 50. And specifically for resistances, if you look, If we had 35 eye level, we can still get tier 5 and tier 4 fire res, whereas with the perfect, we're guaranteed to have tier 3 or above. Now, one thing to consider here is that if you're doing it with cold res, the perfect exalt will not give you tier 3 or above. It'll only give you tier 4 or above. There's a weird thing where cold res has an eye level of 50 for tier 4, whereas fire res does not. And I think lightning res is 49. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I want to make sure that you guys understand that this is a gamble. Like, you have above a 50% chance of getting a very high tier of LE res. But again, it's still a gamble. It's not guaranteed anymore because we are only using omens of catalyzing exaltation. 3, 2, 1, go. So we hit tier 3 fire res. This is kind of like in line with what we were expecting here. As you can see, our amulet is starting to look quite nice because, well, we have 4 out of 4 mods, which are pretty much like this. They're not going to be all tier 1s anymore because Homogs are dead, but still, this is quite nice. So what I would recommend that you do here, we're going to do the same thing except for the prefixes. So you have a couple options here. If we were to hit the global enhancement before and not have this energy shield, what I would recommend that you do is probably go for something like life, because life is just a really good roll on amulets and it's pretty easy to hit. It has a very high weighting, which gets multiplied again 5x by the homogenizing catalyzation. However, since we have energy shield here, we're going to want energy shield or evasion for our prefix. But if we were to have just only global defenses, I would just say maybe we can do life or something like that instead, because with defenses, you are not guaranteed energy shield. You have essentially a 1 and 3 between armor, evasion rating, and energy shield. Energy shield would be the best, but also evasion rating could be okay too, because a lot of times people who go energy shield are going hybrid ES, EV, and then armor would be a dead stat. But if we get armor, there is definitely some stuff we can do to fix it, but we'll get into that if we cross that bridge. So the way we do this is pretty much the same as before. We are going to be whipping out the catalysts. This time we're going to be using defensive catalysts. And we are going to whip out the Homog. We don't need any sort of prefix or suffix omen for the exaltation. No dextral or sinistral exaltations because there's only prefixes left, so it can only hit a prefix. And then we are going to want to YOLO slam here. Pray we hit ES or EV. Okay, we hit armor. This is cool. I was actually kind of hoping that we would, because I can show you worst case scenario. Now, if we hit EV or ES, all we do now, it would be desecrate and then move on and like go to the next step. But because we hit armor, which is pretty much a dead stat, there is one more thing we can do. So we can add this omen of sinistral crystallization and this perfect essence of enhancement. The perfect essence of enhancement will re-roll 1 stat into global defenses, which is a very, very good mod. And then this sinistral crystallization will make it so only the prefixes can be rolled. So now we essentially have a 50-50 to turn this increased armor into a very, very good stat of increased global defenses and a 50% chance of turning our tier 2 energy shield into the same stat. Obviously, we will want to get rid of the armor, but if we don't, it's still okay. Awesome. We got rid of the armor and we're in a really good spot here. So this is kind of to show you guys that like it's not deterministic, but every time we fuck up, there's still things that we can do to kind of save the craft or kind of improve on it a little bit more. Now, a lot of times there are going to be cases where you settle where like instead of hitting the fire res, you hit like life regen. And as I showed you before, those amulets I'm selling for like very, very cheap. But a lot of the times you are going to have a situation like this where you pretty much just hit everything that you wanted to hit and you are just being chilling. So this is the last step of the craft and it is just going to be collarboning, desecrating this amulet for a mod that we want. But we have 2 options. We have the cheap option and we have the expensive option. The cheap option is 100% deterministic. If we use this preserved collarbone and activate an omen of the black bud, this right here, it will guarantee give us a Kurgle modifier. And as you can see here, there are only 1, 2, 3 Kurgle modifiers. One of them is increased energy shield from equipped body armor. This is a very, very solid stat and it's 100% deterministic. However, because if you look here, Omen of Lights are they're less than a div each. Because they're so cheap, you can actually opt into using Preserved Jawbone onto the gold amulet and rolling for either Rarity or Spirit, or even potentially percentage ES. I think that this is really good option for right now just because of how cheap Omen of Lights are. But I wanted to present you with both because if Omen of Lights increase, which I think they will because of the Abyss nerfs, then you are going to want to probably use the cheaper option, the more deterministic option. One thing to consider is that you could also use Ancient Collarbones here, but Ancient Collarbones are like 2 div each, which means if we were going to Omen of Light a null, it's going to increase the cost from this whole interaction of collarboning or desecrating. It makes it go from 1 div to 3 div, which essentially triples our cost, right? But if you look, what does this actually give us? It makes it so the eye level is 40 minimum, and say we need to hit tier 1 rarity, right? We go from 1.35 chance to a 2.8 chance. So essentially a little bit more than double. And all this means is that we are essentially increasing our cost 3x to increase the likelihood of hitting by 2x. So in my mind, that doesn't really make sense from an expected value standpoint. So I think we can skip that. It seems a little bit like a bait to me. I'm not really sure what the use case is for that, but I would say avoid that because it's just too expensive. Anyways, let us get onto it and rage. So we're going to collarbone and we're going to fish for some good rolls here. I would say always use an echo. Echoes are just so valuable. Unfortunately, these are really expensive now. These are like a half a div each. I would say it's worth it. It's well worth it, actually. It's well worth it in this situation because we are going to essentially be Omen of Light annulling if we miss. So we need to make sure that we hit something good, increases our likelihood. The Omen of Echoes just essentially makes it so you can re-roll the Desecration one time. So we hit min roll rarity here. That's kind of unfortunate. And we also hit min roll max ES. We would have accepted tier 2 rarity or like tier 3 max ES. So a little unfortunate, but that's going to happen. And then we hit tier 2 life here as well. And then we also hit max life. These are all decent rolls. Unfortunately, they don't really have synergy with the rest of the mods on our amulet. If instead of this like max ES roll, we had a max percentage life roll here, then getting this tier 3 life would actually just be good enough and we could just call it on the amulet because it's like max life with max life, but max ES with max life doesn't really work. If this was even percentage EV, it would work with max life because there is synergy there. If you're going EV, you're most likely going to be going either pure EV, in which case you need life, or you're going to be going hybrid ES EV, in which case you also need life. Unfortunately for us, I don't think flat ES with flat life is that good. I think we can do a little bit better. And like I said before, Omen of Lights are so cheap. It really does not make sense to be too stingy with these. So Omen of Light, if you guys don't know, it makes it so every time you use an annul on an amulet, it guarantee removes the desecration. So this makes it so we can remove this life 100% of the time. It is one of the few forms of deterministic crafting we still have in the game, and we are going to abuse the fuck out of it. So we're running it back again. Each try of this is 1.5 div. So you have to keep that in mind when you think about settling. Like I think realistically we could have settled on the life there, but at the same time, I want to showcase this craft to you guys. So I want to showcase to you guys what it looks like from a whole standpoint. Ooh, so here's what we have. Like we have two options now. If this was percentage ES, we are just being chilling. Percentage ES from equipped body armors. So this is kind of like the settle option. It's max roll as well. So this is actually like what I would tell you to do if you guys are doing this is just settle here. Okay. Like this is for sure a settle craft. It doesn't need to be insane. Like you can think of this as like, instead of hitting tier 1 max roll ES, this could also be like equated to something like tier 3 percentage ES or something like that. That's pretty much it for the craft. Like you just do that and there's like a lot of hits that you can have. If you're just going for the raw desecration, a hit would be getting increased energy shield, increased evasion rating, rarity, spirit. That's like half of the mods already. And then on top of that, there's also a few good desecrated modifiers you can hit, evasion rating and energy shield from body armor. But it's not 100% deterministic, unfortunately. But as I'm showing you, it is very, very consistent. Like there's very, very high odds that you're going to hit something very, very nice. And even if you don't, it's still okay because the amulets will still be very, very good, even if you get a little bit unlucky. And like, even if we didn't have this fire res and we had something worse, that's still okay. But pretty much most of these stats are guaranteed. You can guarantee global defenses, you can guarantee +3 proj, you can guarantee tier 1 rarity as a suffix, and you can guarantee at least one good mod from your desecration. So that is how you do it. All we need to do now is put on some defensive catalysts. And if we look here, we are getting 92 max ES and 60% energy shield from our body armor. This shit makes us a tank. Like we have no energy shield here. This straight up gives us 400 ES. And I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I don't have an ES body armor really. This is 240 ES. Like if you were wearing a good body armor, this shit is straight up giving you like 700 to 1k ES. It is absolutely insano. And that's pretty much it for the craft. So what is the total cost looking like here? I was buying the +3 proj base for around 4 div each. Realistically, I was actually paying like 3 div some of the time, but let's just call it 4. And kind of going through the craft again, add the rarity with the essence, that costs like 10C. We add the fire res with the perfect exalt and the catalyzing, that costs 1 div. So all the suffixes together cost roughly like 4 or 5 div. Let's call it 5 div. For the prefixes, the energy shield we got lucky on and we added it on for the perfect aug. But realistically, you're going to want to perfect exalt catalyzing this one as well. So let's call this one div. Global defenses just cost the price of the crystallization plus the essence, which is around half a div. So this is one div plus half a div, 1.5. And then the desecration, this one we can actually get for free with just the cost of the collarbone, which is 20C. But if we were going to go for the expensive one and get the chance for getting like the 60 div amulets, then we spent 3 div on average for this. But let's just be conservative. Let's just assume all of the most expensive values here. So this is going to be, let's just say 5 div for the suffixes, and then 1.53, so 4.5 for the prefixes, which brings us to a total of around 9.5, 10 div in order to craft an amulet like this. Realistically, we're probably gonna be able to sell this for like at minimum 15 to 17 div. So pretty solid margins there, but more importantly, if you're going to self-craft, you can actually craft these for cheaper. If you see this on trade for like 15 to 20 div, just craft it yourself instead. I say this every video, so I'm gonna give you guys a disclaimer. Please, you have to do some due diligence here. Every time I post these videos, the cost of materials will go up pretty significantly, and then the cost or the price of the end result goes down pretty significantly. So what that looks like is the cost goes from like 5 to 8 div up to like 10 to 12 div. And then the end result goes down from like 17 to 20 div to like 13 to 15 div. The margins get cut pretty significantly, or even some points, there's cases where it's actually no longer profitable to craft these, in which case, don't craft them. If you're trying to profit craft, skip this. If you're trying to self-craft, just buy it instead. That is how it works. Just do some due diligence, check the cost of the mats versus the, the price of the end result, and take a look and see whether or not this actually makes sense to do. I say this just because I don't want the comments for this YouTube video to be like, bro, the gold bases are like 7 div each now. You said there were 4 div in the video. Like, yes, they're going to go up. Anyways, that is start to finish how you craft fairly deterministically these insano, high rarity, high defensive, +3 proj gold amulets. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I hope to see you guys again in the next one.